Ahe o mahale o we e kapua meri.
I joined the Zonta Club of Hilo at the same time that Lily Inoue joined. So the two of us were inducted the same day. I really knew about the club because of Margaret and a few other people that I know of. But when I was invited through this letter that was sent to me, I think it was from one of my friends who was in Zonta at the time. So that's when I was invited to join the club. I lived up Kawana Terrace, and it was right by the cul-de-sac, and it just happened that Mrs. Yokoyama, who owned Kalakaua Cleaners, was a member of the club, an old-time member. So she was there, and of course, Julie Tulang moved next door, so she became a member also. So when we had meetings, especially at night, then usually I was driving, and then I'd pick up Julie and also Mrs. Yokoyama. And on the way down, sometimes on Kawana Drive, we would pick up Sue Iwashita. And Sue is an old-timer, and she was president of the club also. And then sometimes even go up Ainako Avenue to pick up Rowena Lu, because Rowena Lu was one of the early charter members. So I used to have a car full, but it was nice, good company. So I think we had a nice mutual group. It was a good experience because at the beginning we used to have luncheon meetings as well as dinner meetings. And so to go to luncheon meetings was pretty hectic, but the dinner meetings were nice and relaxing. And I did enjoy the company and the projects and all the discussions that used to go on at the meetings. Miss Jinang, my counselor at Hilo High, is the one that recommended me the school when I said that I was interested in dietetics. So that's where I went. Changed Menominee, Wisconsin, the Stout, at that time it was called Stout Institute. And then later on, it was changed to Stout State College, and later on, became University of Wisconsin Stout, because University of Wisconsin and the state of Wisconsin has several state colleges throughout the state, and each college offers majors in different subjects, and Stout happened to be a school for home ec and also industrial arts. Fortunately, my father was willing and very, supportive in sending me over, leaving Hilo and then going all the way to the mainland. It was a good learning experience because all of a sudden I'm the Midwest, and the seasons were something that I needed to get adjusted to. And not only that, I needed to felt like I was accepted, because my first year I lived in the dorm, and I had two roommates. One was Joan Brown, and she was raised as a Catholic because she went to a Catholic school. And the other was Laura, and she was raised as a Methodist. So I was here right in the middle, not being associated with any church, but primarily my parents were Buddhists. And so I needed to get acquainted with them and then to be able to accept their so-called things that they like to do and all that. And besides that, having to be in the dorm where I was the only one from Hilo and everybody else was from New Jersey or Wisconsin, Minnesota, it was quite an experience. And for them too, it was a good learning experience having somebody coming from Hawaii, because they always thought that Hawaii was in the middle of the ocean and we didn't travel. And, you know, we had people, some of the girls were very innocent or did not know much about Hawaii. So for them, it was a good experience. Well, I know there were some parents who did not feel like, you know, girls should go all the way or leave town, leave the island. But being the oldest in the family, I had 4 brothers below me, and being the first to leave the house, it was quite a change for them. Because, for example, for being the eldest and the only girl, every Saturday I had to sweep and mop the living room and clean out the bedroom floors and all, because the living room had linoleum floors, and that was one of my chores for every Saturday morning. And so all of a sudden, my parents were always working, they were busy. So I was the one that kind of, you know, kept up the house. And so it was something that the boys had to adjust to also. He was a good father because he always, you know, helped us out, and he was there to pick us up from school when we were young, and then because he had his own business. And then anytime that we wanted some help regarding, well, he's the one that taught me how to drive and all that. So, you know, he was very accepting and very understanding, and he raised us really well, I think. And they all went to University of Hawaii, so they had part-time jobs and kept going that way. Yeah. Stout had a good program, and by going to summer sessions all over, I mean, every summer, I finished school in 3.5 years. And I was supposed to go for my internship, my dietary internship, but because I was going to be married within a short time, I came on home because my husband-to-be was already a year ahead, and he was back in Hilo teaching. And so I did come back, and we got married in April and worked for 3 years, and then we went back to New York this time because he worked on his master's at Columbia. Well, I was fortunate to get my dietary internship at St. Luke's Hospital, which is right in New York City, close to Columbia. And so that's where I spent a whole year. It was from July to July. It was a 12-month internship. And in our group at that time, there were 11 of us. And so that's where I got my dietetic background, I mean, the training. And then fortunately, when I went home right after graduation, I was fortunate enough to have a job waiting for me because they had just created an assistant dietitian position at Hilo Memorial Hospital at that time by Rainbow Falls. And since I had applied, I was accepted, and so I came home to that job. And that's where I worked for 3 years before we went back. So at that time, I was on, you know, educational leave, and then I came right back to Hilo Memorial, which later became Hilo Medical, and then Hilo Medical Center. And by that time, I was a full dietitian. And the dietitian in charge was Mrs. Obida Lyman. And she did her service in the Army, and then came and started to work at Hilo Memorial. And when she needed an assistant, that's when I was ready to graduate. So I was really fortunate, you know, to be able to get my experience right away. I think that education was a big factor in what kind of profession or what you did with your life. And in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I didn't feel any feelings about other people or they about me, because somehow or other I was primarily with people of my who were my friends, and fortunately we were all in our own professions, so I didn't have that kind of feeling. And even on the mainland too, other than they being accepting me and knowing about Hawaii, and even later on when I was interning, we had people from Texas and but at that time too, more so I was feeling like I'm glad I'm from Hawaii, and then that I had a good background, and then I was accepted. So I didn't have any feelings about racial or whatever. Every January we have the program dedicated to Amelia Earhart, and as our service projects, it started before we were club members. I mean, we were members of the Amelia Earhart Committee, because the chairman who was leading the group when I first joined later on moved to Honolulu and then passed on. So in the meantime, Amy and I, being members of the committee, carried on. And then we started, or we wanted to help sponsor the Future Flight program that was going on every summer at KMC, and it was started by the Kimura, Art and Ring Kimura, and it was a camp at the very beginning. It was a camp for about 4 days during the summer at KMC, and they had all the experiences of going outdoors and learning about aviation and topics of that sort. And then later on, after a few years, then the program continued at the UH Hilo, and it was a day program. But we got involved, and then the Zonta Club got involved, and then would provide scholarships for a student to enter, to enroll, and to go through the program. It was primarily to sponsor girls, and then Art Kimura is one of is primarily the person who was the one that recommended the names and all that. And then at first it was like $375, but then later on, as the program ended, and then when it stopped sponsoring students like that, then we went into other projects, like people who were doing STEM projects. So we geared into the different schools and their summer programs, or during that year. Dale Olive and Eric Hagiwara started the robotics club at Waikia High School, and then they started the summer program for the students, and so that's when we got involved. And so at that time then, we had different teachers at different schools doing summer programs, like Waikia Intermediate had, and then Waikia Elementary. So at that time then we would sponsor them with a little bit of stipend, to help them. And about that time then it was up to about $1,000 or $1,500. And then they were having this engineering day for girls. We called that engineering day for girls. And then it was all for girls from 4th grade up to 12th grade. And then they would hold it at Waikia High School library, and they would do different projects for the summer. So that was the primary key thing that we had. We've had many students going through the program, and from different schools, Waikia Intermediate, Waikia High, Waikia Hilo Intermediate, and even KL. But I think one of the good things about it is that some of them have continued on in the science program. And a good example would be Nasha Soriano, who was one of our recipients and came to talk to our class, our club rather. And then later on, we did have her as a guest speaker because she's an engineer today with the electrical, with the state. And then there was another person, Sherry Menor, who was also one of our recipients, and she's in Honolulu today as head of the Chamber of Commerce. So she was another one that did come and speak to our club. So we do have people who have continued on. And every so often I wonder how the rest of them are doing. And I guess it's a matter of how they continue on with their education. But I know it would be nice one day to, follow up on how or what they're doing today, after having been exposed to future flight and all these other programs. Looking back in Zonta, I feel like I was fortunate to be able to be with my lady friends who were very successful in their professions or their whatever they're doing, and then the fact that they have influenced me as such by how they are doing and what they are doing and how they have accomplished. And I feel like as a parent and a working person, I had some good people to look up to and to be able to try to do as much as I can to help others. And having worked in my field, I feel like, it was a good experience. And not only that, I should still keep myself going and then encouraging my other family members. But hopefully, they will succeed also.